Hello there, and welcome to the I Never Knew podcast, also known as Inc. This show dives into the life experiences of people who have been through it all and have come through the other side stronger, better, and triumphant. Each story is raw, authentic, and, at times, heartbreaking. One thing joins it all together: the fact that the stories can help the listener learn and grow. Hosted by life coach Maureen, she sits down each episode with a new guest who will empower the listener to set out on their self-discovery journey and start to heal. Now you'll be joined by Maureen and her special guest. Please enjoy the show.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. I'm so happy that you're here. I love that you're here. First of all, I love all of our subscribers, and I love that this community is growing. As always, you know, I only bring top-notch guests to you, and today's fantastic because, you know, I'm on episode 110 now. And you would think I've covered everything. Well, guess what? As humans, I could do this for 10 years and still not cover everything because we're always evolving. We always have different situations and different experiences. What's cool about my beautiful guest today is I read what she does and I thought, light bulb, I've never covered this. And it is something any of us who are parents, we go through. So today, listeners, I'm so pleased to bring you Laurie Moser. She's the founder of Staying Active, Health, and Wellness. She's an advocate for moms who have teens with mental health challenges. Raising my hand, raising my hand, raising my hand. After 7 years in the fitness industry and after facing these challenges with her own child, she knows firsthand that taking care of ourselves has a huge impact on our ability to care for those around us. Through her online course and group support program, she provides moms with self-care tools and a sense of community so they can connect with like-minded parents and with themselves. And I think that is so, so key because sometimes we feel we're so alone in our problems. And her website, we'll give you all the links, everything at the end, but her website is for moms who feel overwhelmed, frustrated, and exhausted, trying to support their struggling teens while also caring for their own mental health and well-being. So without further hesitation, good morning and welcome our new friend of the podcast, Laurie.
Good morning, Maureen, and thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm so excited to share my story, and hopefully it will help and resonate with your listeners.
Yes, and we were just talking off air, listeners, and she said everything that you guys know. I firmly believe why I do the podcast, and she said, had I not gone through my own experiences with my own child, I would never be able to be in the field and the purpose and the calling that I'm in now. And I think it's so beautiful. And with that being said, we always start out on I Never Knew with our knee story. And our knee story doesn't have to be one thing, but it's basically that moment that brings us to the awareness that something's not working, something has to change. I got to stop the insanity cycle and figure something out. So let's talk about what your knee story experience was with your daughter.
Yeah, I remember it very clearly. It was a few years ago, and I was sitting on my bed, just feeling so helpless, paralyzed, and heartbroken in that moment about what to do next to help my daughter. I wanted someone to, tell me what to do. Just give me the answers and solutions, make everything better again. I wanted to feel that peace, calm, and stability that we had in our home. And I wanted to have a relationship with my daughter again. She felt so distant from me at that time, but I knew I couldn't control or fix my daughter. So I knew that the only thing that I could control or fix was taking care of my own mental health and well-being. And that's when I realized that in order to help and connect and support my daughter, if I was exhausted, overwhelmed, and burned out, which was how I was feeling, I wasn't going to be able to be there for her, that I needed to have the energy and state of mind in order to help and support her. And I had to start looking after my own mental health and well-being. So that's when I started my daily practice of journaling. Anything more was just too overwhelming. But I thought I must have heard it somewhere, journaling. You know how things sit in the back of your mind? And I thought, okay, I can do that. I can do 5 minutes. And I actually set my timer. I thought I'll just do 5 minutes. So I started with 5 minutes of daily consistent journaling, and it made such a big, it's not like the first time I journaled, it was, I feel wonderful, but I just started to notice it by consistently doing that, it really made a difference for my mental health. I felt this weight being lifted off my shoulders, and I just had a better state of mind after I journaled. So that's how I started my self-care practice.
Yes, I love all of that. And as a life coach, of course, I always encourage my clients to journal as well. And when I was going through sort of my soul changing moments, I'm not really a journaler. I'm a very outlet talker. I need to talk to people, and I'll talk to 4 different people about the same thing so I can get, all these different perspectives. But I think you're absolutely right about the journaling. And I'm going to say this, especially when it came to what was going on with your daughter. I think when we write it down, we also become a little bit accountable, because we're like, oh, I yelled at my daughter today. I told her she was a rotten kid. And it's like, oh, gee, so it's kind of an accountability thing too, with the journaling. So it's kind of neat that it reflects back, right?
Yes. And that exactly what you said, Maureen, is when I was writing stuff down, I could then, like, it gave me a whole new perspective. I was like, oh, maybe I didn't handle that very well. Or I've noticed that when this happens, blah, 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 this is how I feel, right? So I was able to give me that perspective that I don't think, just talking it out in my head or even with somebody else, I don't think I would have had that perspective. So it was an amazing tool for that. Yeah.
Yes, I totally agree, because it's almost like, no one's going to read your journal, but then in the back of your head, you're like, what if someone did read this? They're like, and I'm going to start this whole thing off by saying mom guilt is a real thing. And when it comes to teenagers, it's almost like those phases of childhood. Now I have 3 adult children I raised, and now I am raising my 15-year-old grandson, who we've had for almost 2 years. So I've had the teenage years for sure. I think when they're younger, we're just like, it's easier to fix the problems, or it's easier to come back and say, oh, shoot, we shouldn't have done that. But I think when it comes to teenagers, the mom guilt is real, because it's almost like we're going, oh man, I've failed. And I think that's really why teenage years might be harder. What do you think?
Yeah, I love that you actually used that word failed, because that was a huge part for me for a long time, is I have 3 other kids. So what worked parenting those 3 other kids didn't work for her because of her mental health challenges. So it was a huge sense of failure. It was like, what am I doing wrong? I must be doing something wrong. That she's going through all these struggles, and what I'm doing as a parent isn't helping. I must be doing something wrong. So that was even as a teenager, when, like, she was always, even as a little kid, more challenging than the others. But as a teenager, it got worse, because you add on the teenage years and then mental health challenges. So mom guilt and shame was huge.
Yeah. And I think when we look back, a lot, like you said, a lot of the times we don't do self-care because we're so consumed with making them okay and their emotional state. And coming from someone who's had 4 children that I am raising, or 4 teenagers, with mental health stuff. I've got 2 children with ADHD, and now my grandson, we also are working on getting therapy for his ADHD. And then I had a daughter with bipolar. So when it comes to mental health challenges, I didn't have time, and I had 3 of them. So you forget the self-care, and you're right. We, in life in general, if we're not good, we can't be good for others. Yeah. So if you mind me asking, what kind of mental health struggles was your daughter experiencing?
Yeah, she was like, when I think back now, it's these signs you don't realize till you're older and they're older, and that perspective taking. But I remember even as a baby, she was one of those babies that never liked being like held and cuddled a lot. And actually, I remember clearly she didn't, when you know how most babies like to sleep either beside you or right near you. They take great comfort and security in that. She didn't sleep well till she was 7 weeks old, and we put her in her own room, in her own crib, and then she slept well. So she always liked her own space. And so we kind of noticed that when she was younger. And then she was kind of aggressive for, I know it's a stereotype here, but especially for a little girl, she was quite aggressive. So we started noticing that. And then when she was age 5, she was officially we went through the counseling and diagnosis, getting assessments, and diagnosed with ADHD. And at that time, it was still called Asperger's syndrome, all under the autism spectrum now. But it was high functioning. So if you looked at her and first met her, you wouldn't know anything. It's not until you spent a little bit of time with her. So that was which totally made sense, because as she got older, it was the social interactions that became very, very challenging for her in school. So that's where we really started to see some issues too. So as a parent, when we were talking about mom guilt and shame, the reason I think getting the diagnosis helped us so much as parents is it helped us to understand. It helped us to understand, oh, it's not because we've done something wrong and failed as parents, or that you're being bad or naughty, right? It said, oh, you have these challenges. So this is why you act this way. So it really gave me an understanding as a parent. So it really helped in that way.
I can appreciate that so much, because actually I've just discovered that I also, what was formerly known as Asperger's, I also am high functioning autistic. And listeners, to make it clear, I know people have a vision of what autism is, and they're nonverbal, and there's definitely different levels of the spectrum. And Asperger's, and the way that I found out is, my husband has really been helping me, is I have those preferences and those sensory things and crowds. And so it looks different. And my parents, of course, from Gen X, our generation, our parents we were the unsupervised generation. They really didn't care. It was just do what you got to do and suck it up. So I applaud you, because I think this is where we need to go now, is be more aware of our children who have either mental challenges or they are neurodiverse. And that's what ADHD, autism spectrum, all of that is. Just the wiring is different. And the not wanting to have people in your space is very common. I'm not very affectionate. I'm not a hugger. I forget to hug people in my life. I love them. I speak it, but it is difficult. So I appreciate that you said by looking at her, you don't know. But man, who knows? If I look at you, if you have depression, I can't know what's going on. So this is great that you did that comparison. Something that you said, and listeners, when you go to her website, she's got a blog as well. And as I was researching her, and there's something that she posted, and it's called her article is Why Listening to Your Teenager Rocks. And we don't listen. Some of us don't listen to our children, let alone, we especially don't listen to our teenagers, because they can be overwhelming, and we just hear them da 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 da. I have a very talkative teenage grandson, when I used to have a son who would barely talk to me. So it is new for me, and it is very energy draining, but I love him, and I try very hard to say, let's talk when I can give you all of my attention. So you give us tips for active listening. And I think if we're going to say anything in this podcast, I think this is going to help parents most of all. So tell us some tips on active listening.
I'm so glad you mentioned the listening part, because that was one of my parenting tips. And I just want to make it really clear. This is something I need to work on all the time. I'm a lot better than I used to be, but yeah, we think that if we're not saying anything, we're listening. That's what I thought, right? I'm like, oh, I'm not saying anything, I'm listening, but I wasn't doing a good job listening at all. So what I've really realized with listening with my kids, I think so often, especially for kids in pain or struggling, right? We want to give our advice, our solutions to them. And what I have found most of the time, they don't want that. Like I'll actually say now, if my son likes to talk a lot too, so I'll say, do you want me to listen or do you want me to give advice? And usually they just want you to listen. So I really try, and I try to mirror my body language so that when I'm listening, I'm not also doing something else. So I'm actually showing them that, yeah, I'm like, if they have an upset face, I try and mirror an upset face. Even if my head, even sometimes I might be thinking, oh, that's silly, you're upset about that. I'm trying to mirror it, right? Oh, you're really concerned about this. I'm trying to show them I'm concerned about that. And what I have learned when I do this is it makes them feel so much more heard and valued, and then they're more likely to open up again. So I'd say the listening, especially to your teen, it's one of the best skills you can improve and work on, is just listening to them, because they just want to know that you genuinely care and can empathize with what they're going through. And the time, like you were mentioning, timing, I find it's always when you're watching some TV show and it's the middle of a big scene, or that's when they want to come, or you're getting ready for bed. That's when they want to talk.
Yes. Yes,
All the time. And I heard some parenting expert on teenagers say that teenagers do that, right? But the thing is that's their time for when they want to talk. So unless you really can't, to really try to be open to listening to them. So I'm trying a lot now or trying to do a lot better that, okay, it's bedtime, I'm tired, but you've come in on your own time and willingly to want to talk to me. So I'm going to really try to listen to you.
I love that so much. And I saw something that said my grandparents get the parent that my children deserved. I'm a lot more patient now. I'm a lot more aware and understanding. I have more time. My lifestyle is different. I'm not a single parent trying to just feed them and keep them alive. But my grandson happens to be a very highly sensitive kid. And so he does take a lot of energy, and what we've done is also for my mental health, as you said, the overwhelm of parents is when they want us, then we're not going to give them as much if we're just exhausted and we're like, what do you want right now? What I found works is he's so good at communicating, and he'll say, Grandma, I'll tell you if I want to vent, if I need comfort, or if I need a solution. And I tend to go into life coach mode with him, and he has to go, Grandma, I just wanted to vent. I'm like, oh, sorry. But he also will text me and say, hey, can I talk to you later tonight? And I love that, because then I can give him that time and I can do my thing and prepare myself, for that talk. So I appreciate exactly what you're saying. And what you said is so important, is they're saying stuff about something and we were teenagers. You're like, really? That's not the end of the world. So teaching them coping skills to say, I'm trying to teach him, he's got a lot of anxiety, and I teach him to say to himself, this too shall pass. I can find a solution. What's my first step? And that kind of takes the emotion out of it. Plus we've got puberty and hormones going on. So everything is magnified, right? Yeah. Huge. Yeah. So I love that. One thing that we ran into just this week, we're pretty big on yeses and we don't give too many no's, but he wanted to do something to his body that we do not agree with. And we just don't think it. We think it's a whim. We think it's because he does quite a few things like on a whim. And he was upset that we said, no, not till you're 18, then you can do what you want with your body. So for example, piercings or tattoos or dyeing your hair. Now he's got long hair, drives my husband crazy, but he didn't understand the no. And my husband is not great at giving a real big reason. My husband just said, because I don't like it and it's not conventional. And so we kind of did this headbutting. What do you do when you run into those you're up against a wall? I want this thing, you won't let me have it. And then we could either escalate, we get mad, whatever. What do we do? What's a good solution?
Yeah, that's a hard one, right? Because there is some things, and it varies from every family and based on what your morals and values are as a family. But there's some things that, are just for you as parents, and no until you're 18 and you can make your own decisions. So what I have found is working better with my teenagers is yeah, so saying the no, and then they'll be upset, but saying, I understand, like trying to empathize, saying not that old, like my parents used to say, well, no, because I said no, and I'm your parent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that just makes them more upset. So I'm trying to empathize, saying, I understand, like if it was a tattoo, I'll use that as an example. I understand you want a tattoo. You think they're really cool. Your friends have tattoos. So I get it. I get why you want that. So I understand why you're upset, but the answer is a no, because that's something your dad and I feel until you're 18, you need to have that awareness to make that decision and be responsible for that at 18. And then they're still probably going to be upset, but I find it's not for as long, because instead of, like I was saying, our parents' generation of no, I'm the parent, so like what goes in our house, right? It's
Yeah.
no, I get why you want that. I understand why that's important to you and why you like that, but it's still a no.
Yeah, yeah. My growing up was because I said so.
Yeah,
That's
exactly. It's because I said so. That was when you asked why, it's because I said so.
and my husband, he's kind of that thinker too. He's more of a logical thinker, and he's an engineer, and I'm more the empathetic.
Yes.
I'm kind of a go between a lot,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'll back my husband on some things, and stick with it. But I also try to have him soften the way he's explaining it
Yes.
a little bit as well. So one of the things you talked about and in one of your blogs, it said 5 minutes makes a difference. So we've talked about journaling. That makes a difference. What are some of the other things? Because I know your focus is on the parents and I'm sitting here focusing on the teens, but what are some of the other things that parents need to do to be a better parent to their teenager?
Yeah, so for the self-care tools, I also found, because journaling made such a difference, that I then added on some breathing exercises and movement. And those have just made such a difference. I find especially the movement, like getting outside, walking my dog. I do that every morning. And I do those things in the morning. And why I love that is because we all know that as the day goes on, more challenges, more things that are out of your control come up. And by the end of the evening, I'm exhausted. And I think, especially if you're raising teenagers with mental health challenges, it's exhausting. And I don't have energy to do anything at the end of the day. So I do those things in the morning, because then I feel like no matter what happens, I can start my day with a win. I can take control of my day the way that I want to. And then I'm able to better handle what comes up during the day. So that's kind of what I've incorporated into every single day now. I do that. Weekends are a little bit more relaxed, but I've just found that those, for my state of mind, have made such a difference. And then the group support for parents. I wouldn't have gotten through all this without group support, without, because you feel so alone. Like when your child is diagnosed with the mental health challenges, and especially as they become teenagers and the challenges get bigger, you feel so alone. So being with, we actually had counseling that was mandated, and I completely understand why they did it that way, because you have to go. And
Yeah.
it was so great because you're with other parents that have gone through similar experience and journeys, but some that are more evolved on their journey. So they're able to share their experiences of what worked. And that just made such that support from being around other parents that were experiencing similar things and feeling heard and valued from other parents made all the difference. And I'll always remember this one mom saying to me, it gets better. It does get better. So having that support is everything. It really makes such a difference.
I agree. And in the age of technology and internet, oh, what a blessing. And I say that about every situation in our life. That's why we do AA. That's why we have online meetings and Zoom and all the things that make it so much easier to feel supported, or 988 if you have suicidal ideation. We didn't have those things, and we did feel very isolated when we were younger, and even when I was raising my teenagers. One of the things, so my son, who's he'll be 25 next month, he not only had ADHD, but he had oppositional defiant disorder. So I was a single parent, and it was just me, and the mornings were so tough and struggles. And I don't know if I had told this story, listeners, yet, but I was so frustrated one morning trying to get him up, going in there, get up, get up, get up, get up. Then he's grouchy and he gets up and I said, you need to eat something. I'm making some toast and I've got the knife and I'm in my robe or whatever. And he's defying me in every turn. And so he finally is going out the door to catch the bus, and he usually like slams the door and he kicks the gravel all over. And I said, don't slam the door and don't kick the rocks. And he did. And I was that mom that had no self-care and no support. I lost it, and I'm running down the street with a butter knife in my robe going, you're such a punk. Why do you and we laugh about it today. My son was like walking slowly, and then he looks back at his crazy mother, like psycho mom with her butter knife, going, oh my God. And he starts walking faster and faster. Like, I lost it. I absolutely lost it. So there's your support group for me, guys, is you don't have shame over the moments where you are going to lose it, right?
Yeah. I can only imagine the challenges that you face being a single parent, how hard that would have been. Like, wow, it's hard enough being having a partner and being a team, but doing it by yourself. So even more reason why getting support, like having that support from other parents, moms, is just so crucial for someone else to say, yeah, I hear you. I know how that feels. My kid did something just similar. This is what I did that helped, right? And not feeling that guilt or shame about how you handled something, right? So that is one thing now that I think has made it so much easier, is that if you live in a small town or remote area, to be able to get the support and services online now has made such because you can find the Facebook groups for moms and parents. You can get online counseling, therapy, workshops, courses. So that's made a huge difference in that accessibility now.
Yes.
And that's a real positive thing.
I agree so much to that we have these resources at our fingertips, and don't be ashamed, and don't, feel like you are different from everyone, because we are all the same. If you're a mother, you've been through it. One of the things that I didn't get to do raising them as a single parent, and I did not have support from the other parents. So I was very much alone in the disciplining and the challenges of the mental health and the, giving the medications and the doctors and the teachers and all that. But one of the things is I never got a break. So because I didn't have that support system, and I really did have shame, and I didn't have a support system. So how important do you think, and I think this would have made a difference for me, like now I'm so calm and I can do this, the getting away from your child.
So important.
Right? Putting some space between
yes.
you and them, even just taking a weekend or a little staycation or an hour to go shopping. What do you think?
I'm so glad you brought up that point, because when I was doing my spreadsheet on some Instagram posts and Facebook posts I want to do, that was going to be my next one, is asking for help. It's so important. And especially if you're doing it by yourself, even more, like, it's important for everybody's, but especially if you're on your own. And I think as moms, like, I know I was really guilty of this. We think, I don't know, for some reason, I don't know why we think we need to do all this by ourselves, or that we can. I don't know why we do that. So we really need permission, and to hear you're not supposed to do it by yourself, and ask for help. That would be my one almost biggest tip to moms, is ask for help, because your friends, like, I know, and I'm sure you feel the same way. When I have a friend who asks me for help, I love it. It makes me feel needed, and I feel really good and valuable when I'm able to help a friend. But often your friends or family members, they don't know. They really don't know how much you're struggling, and you have to ask for help. Most likely, no, it's that whole nobody's coming to save you. Nobody's probably going to show up and bring you food or say, I can tell you're really stressed and need a night off or weekend. That probably won't help or won't happen. But ask. If you ask family or friends, 100% somebody's going to do something for you. They will. They just will. So it's so important to ask.
I totally agree with you. And I think I'm gonna sidebar with you. We're gonna go off this little path over here, and then we're gonna come back, because I do think you're right. Why do we feel there's such a and I deal with this with my life coaching clients that are moms. My gosh, whenever I ask them a question of what do you feel most guilty about, it is always about being a bad mom.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're not a bad mom, you're a mom. Period, guys. There is no perfect mother, and there's no dress rehearsal here. There's no trial run. You do what you do with the tools that are in your toolbox at the time. Yeah, now that I'm much older and I'm grandparenting, I got a much bigger toolbox than I had back when I was, 19 having my first child. So I want to ask you, we're just going to get into a little bit of advocating for a minute. Why do you think society and what in society makes us think we need to be these perfect parents, perfect mothers?
Yeah, I'm so glad you're asking this. And I think especially it seems to be for moms. I mean, I don't think even from the group supports that I was in, I didn't hear dads say that near as like I don't know if I ever heard a dad say I feel so guilty, blah blah blah. And I'm not saying no dad does. I'm just saying overall, it really seems to be more of a mom thing. And I don't know, maybe you can jump in on your thoughts on this too. I think social media has in some ways even made that worse because lots of it's curated, right? So we might see the Instagram or Facebook post that's highly curated and think, oh my goodness, my house doesn't look, my house is a mess. I can't even get the kid dressed and a lunch in the backpack and out the door for school on time. And they're cutting little cute sandwiches for their kids' lunch, right? So I think that's some of it. And then, yeah, I don't know why as women, moms, especially, we feel that we need to and should be doing it all by ourselves. Like, I think especially in the Western culture, we really think we should be doing this all by ourselves and we're not supposed to. Like, that's really what I've learned from my group support is we do better and we're supposed to be involved in community and helping one another. And we do better and our kids do better when we get more help too. Like when you're an exhausted, burned out mom, you're not helping your kid. Like when I get a break, even if I've spent an hour with a friend in the afternoon, I come back feeling recharged and I'm a better mom, right? A better person. So I really, would love for moms to hear the message of get help, take time for yourself because it'll make you a better parent. It really will. And ask for help. People want to help you. They really do.
That's right. All the parents out there, moms, that think we have to do it all, be it all, and run ourselves ragged. Actually, there are two things, in my opinion, that all children need. And I say this to my parents when I coach who feel like the moms that feel like they're not doing enough. And I say this, you know what your child wants? Your time and your love. Are you giving that? Yeah. Then you're doing it right. That's it.
100%.
Period. Exclamation point. That's it. Give them your time and your love. You don't have to give them designer clothing. You don't have to be their best friend and go to concerts with them. Just give them your time and your love. Here's something I made a mistake on, and maybe you mothers out there can appreciate that now that I'm the grandma of four grandchildren now, and raising 3 teenagers. What I made a mistake on was trying to save my children from their problems. And I would jump in and fix it. And I failed, I think I failed, a couple of my children, some of my children, my middle daughter and my son are pretty good now at problem solving. But what I did was I would jump in because I didn't have support. My own failures felt like, and triggers felt like, I'm not going to let that happen to my kids. What changed with my son, and he'll say this to this day, is when he would bring me problems, and I didn't get this until he was about probably 17, he'd bring me a problem. And then I learned instead of fixing it, I'd say, oh man, what are you going to do about that? How does that make you feel? What do you think you should do? Oh, I'm sorry you're going through that. But I used to be like, what can we do? What can we do? What can I do to fix this? How can I help? And sometimes we need to just let them learn. And my grandson, I'm doing great with now. He's got a lot of anxiety. He'll text from school and say, I'm having a lot of issues. And I'll say, okay, just breathe. What can you do to distract your thoughts? How can you get through this moment? And instead of running to the school and picking it up like I would have my other son or my son, I now push him to have coping skills to be able to solve it and work through it. And he's better for it. And he'll come home and be a totally different kid and just say, oh yeah, I was just having, a moment where I was feeling overwhelmed. And I would have run and, let me protect you. What do you think about teaching
Oh,
coping?
I love that you brought that up, Maureen, because I think that is one of the biggest things, one of the biggest gifts and blessings and skills we could teach our kids is coping skills and resilience. And I think that it's like this is one really about having four kids. One huge advantage with having four kids is I've gotten better with that, because I think at first, yeah, we just want to jump in and solve their problems, right? And fix everything for them and not see them struggle or in pain. But that is really, they'll never learn anything. They'll never learn those coping skills if we solve everything. And then they grow up and they leave for school or they leave to start their own lives and they don't know how to solve anything or how to handle problems or challenges. So I think that, and I love what you said, that's what I'm trying to do too. When one of my kids has a problem, such and such happening, instead of offering any solution, it's like, oh yeah, I hear you. That's hard. I mean, tell me, how do you feel about that? And oh, what do you think you could do about it? And sometimes I'm amazed in saying, what do you think you could do about it? And what they come up with. I'm like, well, there you go. You just came up with your own solutions that I wouldn't even have thought of. So I agree. I think that's such a important skill set for kids, is those coping skills and learning, plus teaching them. You're giving them the confidence in themselves to, by telling them, I believe in you. I know that you can handle this. You can come up with your own solutions. And then they feel confident in themselves that, oh yeah, I can handle this. So I love that you brought that
Yeah.
up. I think it's so important.
I agree. And what I learned that's different is I've said, I trust your judgment. And if you
Yeah.
do something that betrays that trust, then we'll deal with that when that happens. But by giving that, you're empowering them, and you're
Yeah,
empowering
completely.
them because they're out of the child stage where you make all the decisions for them, and they're not quite into the adult phase where they're going to have to be responsible for themselves. So they're in this tween teen, and you have to start building that confidence that
Yes.
I believe you can make these decisions. I believe you have good judgment. I believe that you know right and wrong and you know what's best. Don't get into a car with someone who's been drinking, or don't defy me. Don't lie and say you're at this person's house. And it's worked much better with my grandson because he tells me everything. That boy just spills the beans. He just sings like a songbird. I don't even have to ask this kid. He'll go, hey, Grandma, I have to tell you something. And I'm like, oh, God, what is it? But he does. He tells me everything. And I think it is because I've always said, no matter what happens, I'll never stop loving you. So I might be angry with your decision, but I'll never stop loving you. And I think that gives them a safe space to come to you and say, hey, I can say this thing to you. And if you get mad, at least you don't overreact and
Yeah.
you still love me. And I think that's where the mom guilt, I was thinking when you were speaking, why we do what we do about not giving them the coping skills is it comes back, everything we do, all behaviors come back to us.
Mhm.
I think it's like, I don't want to look like a bad mom. I don't want my kid to, I used to say, I don't want to see my kid on Oprah in 20 years. I used to think, if I don't do this, then he's going to tell people I'm a bad mom. Or when he's 30 and he's got problems, it's going to be all my fault, because it was on my shoulders. Their failures were on my shoulders, but I felt like their successes were too. But I had this extra burden of trying to do it right. And that mommy guilt was, I need to fix it for them or else they're going to think that I don't care. That is a big insert of mommy guilt. Agree?
Huge, huge. I agree. We're so worried about being judged from other parents, other moms on not being a good mom. I agree. I think that what makes us want to solve a lot of our kids' problems without letting them go through it and come up with their own solutions or empower them, like you said, to say things like, yeah, you got this, you can handle it. I know you'll figure out what you should do in this. And they do. They really do. So I have a dog. My youngest right now is going through a stage where she's dressed like, I don't even know if she brushes her hair in the morning, in the baggy sweatpants and shirts. And I feel with my oldest, I probably would have gotten kind of into a battle of you can't go out in the house like that. And I'm just like, whatever, she'll figure it out. If that's how she wants to leave the house right now, that's okay. So I think in letting a lot of those things go too, and realizing they're not a reflection on us as a mom, right? Like
Yes.
her choosing her style right now, number one, that gives her that independence that, yeah, you can dress how you want. I mean, within reason, but I'm not going to tell you what you have to wear, how you have to do your hair. So that makes her feel confident and independent that she can be who she wants to be. And it's not a reflection on me as a parent. She's her own person.
I know we're so programmed at times to make our children into these mini me's, and it's like you're not here. I heard a really good thing that they had described about parenting, and I think it was a TEDx talk where they said, you are the shepherd of the sheep. You didn't create the sheep. You're not cloning the sheep. You're just guiding the sheep. And I loved that whole thought process where if you just look at yourself as the guide of the sheep, you didn't make the sheep per se, I know we gave birth to them, but per se, they came into this world to be their own person and their own independent thinker. Your job is just to guide them, and letting go of our own expectations of our children is going to make us a better parent, I think.
100%. I think it's so important to let them, like you were saying, to piggyback off that, let them, they're their own person, right? They're their own person. And it's really important that we let them express who they are, be it the way that they want to dress or do their hair. And I especially think once they start entering those teenage years, that's when they really want to start doing that, right? Yeah. And it's just really important to let them have that independence and being their own person. Yeah. And I think what you were saying about your grandson, you have to applaud yourself, give yourself a tap on the shoulder, because you've obviously done an amazing job in the fact that he feels that he can always come to you with his concerns and tell you everything, tell you anything, right? That you're a safe space for him. And I think that's what we want with our teenagers, right? We want them to be able to come to us when they are experiencing problems, concerns, or whatever's going on in their life to be able to share with us. So you've obviously created that environment and space with your grandson. So that's unbelievable. Good job.
It's a very new thing for him because, like I said, we got guardianship of him, and he'll be with us for almost 2 years. When he first came and was living with us, I would walk into his room after school or whatever, and I'd say, do you have anything you want to tell me? And he'd get this look of like, what? And I go, what? I go, do you have anything that you want to share with me? And he goes, nobody's ever asked me that before. And I was like, you're not in trouble. Like, he felt like he was in trouble when someone came to him and said, do you have something to tell me? You're in trouble. I'm like, no, I just want to touch base with you. I want to just stay connected. So, so maybe that's why now, he's going to be driving and I can trust that I'll know where he is. And, he'll, we're pretty lenient about, going to parties with friends. And as long as we know and as long as you follow the guidelines, we're just guiding you, but we're not, and the kind of music that he likes. And, that was, and it's an age-old debate between parents and teenagers. Come on now. I mean, this goes all the way back to the 50s, with Elvis Presley. Oh, you're listening to that music. And then the 60s and every 70s, long hair, hippies, like every generation has this debate over what
Oh, yeah.
the teenager wants to do, what the parent wants them to do. And I think we're getting better at allowing and accepting. And I'll say this, as a life coach, and this is something that I'm going to emphasize to everyone, listeners, you have a set of beliefs, but your child does not have to take your set of beliefs. And for me, I believe my parents did it really well. We did not have religion in our home. We did not have any talks about bigger, deeper things of what we're supposed to believe. My parents actually said to me, we want you to decide for yourself. That was the best thing they could have ever done, because I do coach adults who were in these cult-like religions or these cult-like beliefs, and their parents could not accept that they had independent thinking or they had a different philosophy on life. And I did feel different in my family. Maybe that Asperger's, whatever, high sensitive person. I just didn't believe a lot of the stuff that they talked about, but it had nothing to do with religion and belief. But we do tend to push our beliefs on our children. And so outside of allowing them the freedom to dress like they want, we have to allow them the freedom to think and believe what they want, because I will be coaching your child in 5-10 years to undo some of that program stuff about feeling guilty for thinking the way they want to think.
I love that example, Maureen, that you used about religion. And wow, great job for your parents for handling it that way. Because my son goes to a Catholic school, but we're not active in the religion anymore. We don't regularly go to church, but he picked the school, so he wanted to go to the school. And he also so he's 16 now. So he also last year at age 15 last year, he chose to get the confirmation and go the reconciliation. He chose to do all that process, but that was 100% on him. We never even talked about it. He just came home one day and said, this is what I want to do. And it's okay, fantastic. But I think it made me feel good as a parent for the same reasons you were talking about. That was his belief system. He chose to do that. We never mentioned anything one way or the other about it. That was his choice. And I think it is really important that we don't put our beliefs on our kids and tell them, this is the way, this is what we believe as a family, and this is what you have to believe too. I mean, every family has their own values, but it is really important our kids are their own independent people and have their own belief system, and that we allow that, right? We don't make them feel sad or guilty for it.
Hold on 1 second. I think we lost some audio with you. Your audio decreased a little bit. Hold on.
Good. Okay.
So I think what you said, what I love is it's such a reverse thing that you said, where you're like, we didn't push any of the religion, and then he went and found it himself. And I think a lot of times what will happen is we push this belief system on them, and then as they're finding themselves and their independence in their teen years, they're going to rebel. And then it's kind of going to be the opposite effect of what you wanted anyway. And you were like, if I wanted him to be Catholic, I didn't push him to be Catholic, and he decided. So the freedom, I think it's the freedom to believe whatever they want to believe in. My grandson and I have had really cool, deep conversations about stuff. And I always predecess it with this. And listeners and parents, I hope you do this as well. I always say, the way I feel is, or my opinion, or what works for me is. Instead of saying, you need to, you should, our family has believed this for centuries, it's just saying, I have the freedom to believe who I am, and you're allowed to have whatever you believe as well.
Yeah, that is such a great way to say it, that this is my opinion. And that's the one thing about teenagers that is really cool, is you can get into much more in-depth, intelligent conversation. Like, they'll really bring up some interesting topics. And I've had my kids teach me so many things now where I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't know that. So it's really cool to learn from your teenager. It really is. But I've had times where my son or one of my kids might be saying something, I'll be like, oh, but that in your opinion, right? In your opinion, you feel that way. So I think that's a really important example to role model that, yeah, you can, that's your opinion, but that doesn't mean the other family members have to feel that way about it, or your friends, right? So, and then they can learn, they can have these conversations because you're role modeling for them. So they can have these conversations with their friends who might not agree with them. And they learn how to have conversations with other people where you don't have to agree. You don't have to agree. It's not about that, but it's about hearing each other, right?
Yes. And if we stop talking and stop lecturing, you will learn from them. And you have to think, we're not the center of their world anymore. They're not a 4-year-old where we're the center of their world. They're out there in the world listening to friends, listening to teachers, listening to social media. They're getting information. And I love what you said, because my grandson he teaches me every day. He's like, hey, grandma, did you know, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, I didn't know that. Or he'll send me TikToks, and him and I share a love for plants. He wants to open a nursery here in Texas, and we propagate plants for each other. Or we go, hey, what is this plant? He brought me a plant from the wild that I've started growing. It's just fantastic. And letting him know I don't know everything, and I value that you can teach me too. And that's empowering to them too, that they don't feel like I'm always the child, I don't know as much as you do, I feel inferior all the time. Right? I think that's important, that you're empowering them. This has been so amazing. I knew it would be. I love it. I love it. I love it. I just feel, oh, there's this camaraderie when you're mothers, and you can just make fun of the silly things we've done, all the things that we've all struggled with in our humanness. And we're here to just say to everybody, there's no perfect mothers. There's only loving mothers who give their time and their understanding. So I have a segment before we leave, because everything's always so heavy on this podcast. And it's called, How Weird Are You? And so I have some weird, quirky things. And as you know, being, ADHD, we have these weird little quirky things that we do. And I have a little OCD too, but, so what is something that your family would say, my mom has this weird way of doing this, or this weird thing she has to do, like she has to eat a candy bar at 3:00 every afternoon? So what do you think you have that's weird or different?
Weird. Well, I do have a little OCD, so I will do things like I'll wipe down the mirror and then have to wipe it down right again. So that is one of my little weird things. But I would think the kids, one of the things that they would say about me is weird and silly, is with the dog. Whenever I see the dog, when I go down first thing in the morning, and they'll hear this, is I kind of sing her these silly little, like I talk to her kind of like a baby. So I sing this silly little song whenever I see the dog. So they would say that that's one weird, silly thing about me, that mom sings to the dog and has these silly little songs she's made up about the dog.
So. Okay, listeners, as if she didn't already have my heart, she just did the whole dog singing to the dog thing. Now she's like, friend for life, because anyone who sings to their dog like I do, I tell my dogs, I'm glad you said that. My weird thing is that I tell my dogs everything I'm doing during my day, because I work from home. So I'm like, here, I have to go do this right now, or I'm going to go up and do a podcast, but I'll be out in a little bit, or what, give me 15 minutes and then we'll go outside. And, I tell them everything I'm doing, and they don't care. They just care if I'm in their presence or not. If I'm not, they're taking a nap. If I'm in their presence, then they're snuggling. That's really all they care about. So I love you for that. I'm virtually hugging you. So much information, so much good stuff. Your website is fantastic. Tell our listeners where they can go to get support if they're going through this with their teenagers. Your blog, everything about you, where you can help them. So tell us how to find you.
Yeah, again, thank you so much for having me on your podcast, Maureen. This has just been so much fun, and I'm glad we both love dogs so much too. But my website, and again, I really want to stress for moms that you're not alone. So if you're listening to this and you feel like you don't have friends, family, anybody who's there for you, you're not alone. And that's why I've created group support is to make sure moms have a place where they can go to. So my website, stayingactive.ca, I do a weekly blog article. So there's lots of tips on parenting. So you can go there for my blog article and information about, I'm working on some programs right now. So information about my programs. And I also have a free journaling guide to get you started. You can do it in less than 5 minutes. So you can sign up for my journaling guide on my website too.
I love that so much, guys. That's stayingactive.ca because she's our Northern Canadian friend. A, is that what they say?
That's right. A. Yeah.
A. Oh my gosh, you're such a joy. And I just appreciate this time, this hour that you gave to myself and my listeners. And teenage times are probably the biggest struggle of parenting, but I can say this all to you all because I have adult children. You're on the home stretch, and I can guarantee you they're not going to remember when they're 30 the one thing that you did wrong. They're not gonna mention that. And if they do, you just go, that's what I had in my toolbox. You're still alive. My favorite thing to say to my adult children is, "You're still alive, aren't you?" So thank you so much, listeners, for being here. Again, let's grow this community. All of the audience of Laurie today and all the moms out there, please make sure you go on and join us. And if anyone is needing more tips on parenting or more, confidence or life coaching, just getting things in balance, I'm also available at lifecoachmaureen.com. And let's see, what else do we have? Of course, my books. My dog is more enlightened than I am, and my dog is my relationship coach, available on Amazon and all those fun places. I do have a third book coming out, which is going to be fantastic. I won't say the title, but it's a children's book on mindfulness. So we're going to start with mindfulness in children, and as they progress to teenagers and adults, they're going to be more mindful and happy, well-balanced people. Let's see what else we have. My dog boutique. We just got in a bunch of, you're going to laugh, with Halloween coming up. I have hats. I got some fedoras and cowboy hats. And then we've got winter coats. We've got rain coats, puffer jackets, puffer vests, lots of fall and winter apparel for the babies, along with all the healthy, holistic treats that I make in my very own kitchen, and as well as for your kitties. So we don't leave anybody out here because we love our kitties too. So that's at mydogiseverything.net. You can order everything online, and we get that shipped out to you within a day or two at the most. So thank you all for being here. Love you all. And Laurie's going to hang in with me for a minute. And I love you guys. Thank you. If you have any comments, any questions, please give us those 5-star reviews on Apple. If you want to get a hold of Laurie and you didn't hear me mention stayingactive.ca, you can always reach out to me. So don't be a stranger. Let us know how you feel about the podcast. If there's anyone that wants to be a guest, feel free to reach out to me as well. I'm always open to lots and lots of topics and stories and experiences to help one another. So to end today, I'm going to say, take care of yourselves, especially you mommies. Take care of each other. Most of all, please take care of those furry babies. And let's make sure we adopt. There are plenty of shelters and puppies waiting to find their forever homes. So go out there and get you a companion and a forever friend, because there's nothing that will love you more than a pet. So until next week, guys, love you all. Mwah.
Thank you for tuning in to the I Never Knew podcast. If you found today's episode inspiring and educational, please be sure to follow, subscribe, and spread the word. The more people that join the Inc. community, the more it can develop and influence others as we work together for a healthier and brighter future. Until next time.